Hello, everybody. Welcome back to a brand new episode of The War Room, brought to you as part of the Clone Star podcast. I am your host, Mike Overton, and joining me in the co-host seat this week is my wonderful friend from Ireland, Seo. Seo, how are you doing this week?
Not too bad, Mike. How are you?
I am good, thank you. Now, this week's guest is pretty incredible. They have worked on some phenomenal projects, such as Star Trek 2009, Star Trek Into Darkness, Star Trek Beyond, 65, Shazam, one of my favorite films, Oblivion, Prometheus, Super 8, Tron Legacy, Minority Report, Star Trek Discovery, and Star Trek Picard. They've worked both in visual effects and in art. It is the wonderful Neville Page. Neville, thank you so much for joining us this week.
Thanks for having me and that wonderful intro. I, I forget what I've worked on, so thank you. It was a good reminder.
I tell you what, looking through it, it is one hell of a CV. It really is. And as I said, there's a lot of my favorites in there. Super 8 is a phenomenal movie. Oblivion
Yeah,
is one of my favorites. The art direction on Oblivion is incredible.
yeah,
Um,
yeah. It's
Tron
gorgeous.
Legacy is a great film.
Anything with uh, that particular director, um, he's such an artist
Yeah.
that he surrounds himself with other artists and he allows those artists to be artists, which is it's kind of a rare,
Yeah.
unfortunately, a rare thing that directors and producers tend not to do.
Yeah.
Is allow the artists to just do what they do.
Yeah. I mean,
Not everyone.
M83 did a phenomenal soundtrack for that film.
Oh, are you kidding? Yeah,
That
yeah,
soundtrack for that film is incredible. And yeah, and then when you compare that with the art direction and the planet and the ships, and it just, yeah, it's a trifecta. I think it's pretty close to a perfect movie.
glad you
I
think
never,
so.
I never looking at like as you're saying all the different credits. Like when I was writing my notes earlier on, I was there. Good God, this is absolutely ludicrous stuff. Do you ever pinch yourself and say, "How the hell did I get?" I'm not going to say lucky because it's not luck; it's hard work. But you ever kind of say to yourself, "Wow, I've worked on all these absolutely incredible movies," and even the brief time we were chatting before we started this, you seem to be quite a humble individual.
No, no, I'm not humble. I'm incredible, and that's why I get those jobs. Um, I'm incredibly lucky. Yeah, luck is an interesting thing, and you've, I'm sure, heard others talk about, luck is it's a tenuous thing, and it's about being prepared if the opportunity should arise and you're in the vicinity of luck happening. Because if you're not prepared, and luck comes your way, then that's the antithesis of serendipity. So I'm prepared. I've been prepared in that I went to school, a place called the Art Center College of Design in Pasadena. And prior to that, unbeknownst to me, having it being a useful education as well in what I do now, is I went to the American Academy of Dramatic Arts to be an actor, which um, played out, and I did it for a bit. I won't say it was terribly successful, but it wasn't a failure either. Particularly when I think of how I use the acting education as it applies to design, especially with creature design, creature and character. And then even more of a contemporary use of it is I've been directing and writing, and that skill of having been trained classically as an actor is profoundly valuable to crafting characters in script form. And then when you're directing actors, you have a better, I hope, you have a better sense and empathy as to what the actor may need. And every actor is different.
Yeah.
So for me, to not be humble about your life and your achievements is to no longer allow for growth. And I've I've never been under the delusion that I'm great at what I do. I'm capable, and if I have great success, the perception of it at least, it is because I, to not sound cliche or trite, but I'm just like anyone else. I'm a fan of this stuff.
Yeah.
Fan of movies. Fan of. It's why I got into it. I saw the people doing it and thought, Man, that is so cool. I would love to work in film. And that's where I sort of went off track of the goal because I didn't know what it was. To be in film meant, oh, you must be an actor. And then you put on a costume and you're in front of the camera. And I quickly realized I preferred the other side of the camera.
Yeah.
So um, I've been prepared as much as one can, but a perfect example of being prepared and having luck come your way really was Avatar. In that, I studied industrial design. I was not studying entertainment design at the Art Center. It didn't exist at the time in the 90s, late 80s, early 90s. And so I got my education and my degree in industrial design, product specifically. So I was designing with my roommate, who then became my business partner and roommate, again, for many, many years, Scott Robertson. He and I were designing medical products, products for the disabled. And I've always wanted to design creatures, but again, it was like, where does one go at the time? There was no internet access to ArtStation and other
Yeah.
places, and
The
ZBrush
stuff that we're
wasn't even
spoiled with
conceived.
now.
It's true, it's true, and I'm grateful for that. But so for me, it was a hobby, something I just did for fun. But without getting into the whole "how did you get where you are today" Neville conversation, I had a, dare I say, portfolio of creature design, but it was feeble. It was very, very little stuff, and it was untrained. It was just stuff I liked to do. But the majority of that content came from my wheelchair experience. Having designed wheelchairs, a friend who was a colleague at the Art Center College, a teacher, Phil Hetnema was his name. Um, he needed a vehicle designed for the Men in Black ride experience in Florida that could accommodate wheelchair users. So that's more than just making a seat that a person with disabilities can fit in. It's about ingress and egress, getting on and off the vehicle.
I
So
suppose as
because
well,
of,
wheelchairs, they come in so many different shapes and sizes
yeah,
that you got to try and accommodate for that as well.
it's tricky. It's
Yeah.
tricky. It's like being a valet car person. You have to know every single configuration of how cars work. So Scott and I, having a lot of experience in wheelchairs, we were consulted to help design that vehicle. And Scott was a car designer from Art Center. I was a product designer. So the marriage of him and I, in terms of our skill sets, really lent it. It was a very, very good team of designers, from the Universal Studios people to myself and Scott. And so we were hired to do this Men in Black ride vehicle that would accommodate a wheelchair user. Simple enough. But I thought, oh my God, Men in Black was such a fun movie. Is there any way I can design some of the creatures for it? And they're like, we hired you to do the vehicle, but if you want to play, we'll we'll give you a piece of paper and a pencil. Go nuts. And I showed, uh, I think, the passion for it. Maybe not the skill for it, but I showed the passion so much that they threw me a few bones to design creatures for that ride. So, cut to, had that experience, and I have a few drawings in my portfolio and a couple things to point at. But I got a call from a friend who was working with James Cameron at the time on Battle Angel Alita. And his name is James Klein. If you're not familiar with James Klein, uh, he's now a production designer, and he's an incredible talent and a great guy. And I've known him for years. And so I was really grateful. He knew that I wanted to work on creatures and films, but it was more of just for fun and a dream. And he said, hey, Jim's looking for artists to submit portfolios for a new film coming out that's going to be very creature intensive. And I thought, geez, what kind of a portfolio do I submit? Because I don't have anything. It's James Cameron. It's going to be embarrassing. It probably was. But long story short, I submitted what I had. And back then, it wasn't an online thing, it was print
Yeah.
your portfolio and have it couriered over to him. So long story short, I got a phone call from Lightstorm Entertainment saying, "Hey, you and 3 other people have been selected to work with Jim on Project 880/Avatar." And so it was myself, Jordu Shell, Wayne Barlow, and Yuri Bartoli. And all 4 of us were basically corralled at Jim's house in Malibu to start coming up with ideas for creature stuff. So why I bring this one up, in terms of luck and being prepared, I was just barely prepared in terms of my skills. So having this opportunity, usually you get imposter syndrome after a few years of pretending to be capable at something. I got imposter syndrome the moment I got the phone call saying, "Hey, come on up and work with us on this project." I'm like, "Oh, I I caught the squirrel and I don't know what to do with it now." And it genuinely felt that way. The skill I felt I was bringing to the table that made me feel less of an imposter and more like I can be a contributor was that of an industrial designer whose job is to always sort of invent and create new product. And I felt like the product in this case was not a wheelchair, but a creature. But the methodology and the philosophies that at least I utilized to design all made sense in terms of how you design a creature versus how you design a product for a consumer.
Yeah.
So I felt like I'm capable of that, but I didn't have the creature drawing skills in place. I could draw a vehicle, I could draw a prop, but I wasn't hired to do that. So that's where I was, dare I say, kind of shitting my pants. First day in Malibu with a sketch pad and a pencil. I'm like, I am so not ready for this. So I felt like a fish out of water for months. However, if you embrace that and you realize, okay, I'm not at the level of these 3 other guys who I'm going to be working side by side with, I have to fix that.
Yeah.
So it just meant working harder than I had and faster than I normally would have to get up to speed on just get those muscles of drawing and the understanding of animal anatomy and all those things. But then my passion for research, which is all the stuff behind me, I just started gathering books. In fact, we joked about it, particularly Yuri and I, Yuri Bartoli. We would constantly be purchasing books as part of our weekly routine. And so he would have like a stack of new Amazon books, and I'd see it and go, now I need those. So I'd grab the ISBN numbers and I'd buy those and a few others, and he'd see my new ones. And the majority of books I think I have are from Avatar. I spent most of my income on Avatar on books and bones and research, but I think I love that the most of all of the process is just the education, getting yourself up to speed on whatever the subject matter is. Like you didn't include it, and that's okay. But Piranha was a film that I worked on as well, and it's a specific genre of film.
Yeah.
But what I loved it as much as Avatar in terms of being involved because it meant learning everything I possibly could to understand what a piranha fish is, to then be able to design for it. And you can't necessarily charge the client to get up to speed on the subject matter, but there is an element of, if you've hired me to do a whole new thing, I'm going to need a moment but usually it's not in their budget for you to get smart about something. That's on you.
Yeah.
And so oftentimes you're just kind of having to react in the moment. But I feel like, well, you're not going to pay me for it, but I just personally want to know about it. So I probably would be a wealthier designer if I would just do the brief and not buy the books.
So what books were you buying for Avatar then?
Post-COVID cough.
No worries.
I will show you. Because probably one of the best books is this one. Comparative
Okay.
biomechanics. It's amazing. Absolutely amazing. So this is kind of, these 4 books were the ones that made a huge difference to
Okay.
my education. It's a great one. Hell of a read.
Oh wow.
So they're all
Yeah.
kind of like biology, that kind of thing, rather than right.
Yeah, there's no point, and this is my philosophy on this. This isn't the rule. It's just what works for me. But again, when I think about, I've been hired to create and invent new organic products. So if I use industrial design as a reference point for that, because this truly is my philosophy that I use almost in all design, and that is, if you're hired to design a blender,
Yep.
first thing you need to do is understand what a blender is. So you get a blender, you take it apart and go, oh, okay, there's a vessel, there's a mechanism, there's a blade. That blade is designed a certain way for a certain reason. There's vertical ribs in some of the blenders. Why? And you have to understand all of that. RPMs, access to the motor, what is the vessel made out of? What are the manufacturing techniques? Who's the consumer? What colors do they like? What shapes resonate? What is the price point? So all of those things, safety issues as it applies to a blender product. So when you're designing a creature, there may not be safety issues because it's all, say digital on screen, so you don't have to worry about it. But let's take Avatar as an example. One of the most expensive, innovative films for digital media ever. However, we knew that, for example, there's going to be many scenes riding the Banshee. And we knew that that was going to be a physical interaction on set for performance capture. So you couldn't just design whatever felt cool. You'd have that as a goal, but you still had to hit the hard points of ergonomics of a Navi riding on top of a Banshee. And the hardest part was translating human ergonomic dimensions and projecting and kind of figuring out how that will relate to a Navi, because I was the first one to ride the Banshee. In that, I was designing the Banshee, so I knew the general, and this is like all in pencil and paper, and then eventually in ZBrush, pre-dimensions, pre a lot of the cool features and functions that ZBrush has now. So what's kind of interesting is I would take my digital model and I would, as best I can, use tools, but guess the dimensions of the length of the neck, of where the wings at the shoulders are. There's something called a patagium, which is, if you imagine I'm a bird wing, between your wrist and your deltoid is basically a muscle and a tendon, which allows for a certain modality with flight. So understanding all that stuff, and then knowing that we had to print out a 3D model of the Banshee full size for a human, to then have a physical thing that we would get on and ride, was a whole lot of, I think, maybe about that big. It should be right. But, it's an expense, especially full size. But we printed it out, got the model, and then put it onto a steel frame that allowed for all that pitching and yawing. And then I had to design the stirrups that are basically where the Navi's feet would go in. But all of that was, and thank goodness I had many years of horse riding experience, that it allowed me to understand the physicality that you need. And I also love flying, now that I have a lot of experience with that. So understanding, like, when you are flying an aircraft or a bird, do you lean into it and go down, or does the bird lean and you counter that? And those were some of the interesting discoveries for me when I was trying to refine the rest of the physical hard points of the saddle, if you will. That when I'm on this thing, and keep in mind, I've got James Cameron coming in about 2 weeks to ride this thing himself. So if it doesn't make sense, then I have to answer to that. So my confidence was my industrial design background. I'm prototyping, I'm iterating, I'm figuring out and adjusting the geometries of all this stuff. So I was prepared in that regard, because not because I prepared for Avatar, but because I'm preparing myself to just be as smart as I can possibly be on a particular subject matter at that moment. And that's the greatest gift, quite frankly, in this industry, is to be able to get paid sometimes quite well. If you compare what you're doing, sculpting and drawing creatures, and you're able to pay your rent and buy food, that's a pretty privileged career. So anytime any of us would complain about a hard day of work, it's like, yeah, it is hard, and it can be very hard.
Yeah,
but it isn't hard like picking strawberries out in the field in 100+ degree weather. That's hard work. It's not hard like doing roofing construction. I've done some of those jobs, so I feel like I know what hard work is.
Yeah.
And dangerous work and uncomfortable work. Designing in a pressure cooker for a very, very strong director who demands the best. It's hard work, but it isn't hard work, if you know what I mean.
But it's not physically hard, it's mentally hard, because you've got to do 12 different creatures, you've got 3 months to do it, except whereas physically hard it is roofing, construction, it's that kind of thing, isn't it? It's a different it's a different type of hard.
It is.
I was going to say, Neville, like, as you're kind of going through it, like, we've completely established now that you are not remotely humble about what you do or what you've achieved at all. Yeah, exactly. And Mike, when we're advertising this episode, we're going to have to say the incredible Neville Page. Okay, just remember.
I'll send you a list of descriptors.
Adjectives.
Well, I was going to use visionary designer, which is on the front of the book. So
it's true. It's true. Whatever somebody else said, I'm looking at on my floor where my book is. Let's see what I got here. Who the hell am I? Wow. I am impressed.
There it is now.
I feel left out now. It's one of the few art books I don't have.
Oh, Mike, you're not in the club then. Me and Neville are in the club. Look at this. Look at that.
That's okay. Yeah. Yeah.
You have the book.
All right, I'm going to Photoshop one in now. There you go.
But Neville, I think one thing that comes across really well is that you have a very, it sounds ridiculous, you have a very human approach to kind of like what you do in terms of, say, your own kind of perception of, say, you as a person, where you are and things like that. When you said as well about having imposter syndrome, like we all have that at some point, we go into new roles and things like that, and how you were dealing with people, interacting with people and all that. Like, did you, after a while, did you talk to the other 3 guys and ever just say, guys, I don't think I feel completely uncomfortable here? Like, did they kind of say, I'm the exact same as you? Or did you kind of say, John, if I fake it, I can make it? And like, they won't know that deep inside, I might be kind of screaming a bit because of the fact that, oh my God, what am I doing?
That's a good question. Because it was also at the beginning of my career in entertainment, in film in particular. So I'm going to try and recall and be as honest from what I remember, and speculating how I would react. My guess is I probably had a facade of confidence. I didn't want to expose that of myself, that I was terribly insecure, and not insecure in just the, gosh, I'm not as good as I want to be, but insecure in that any moment now, they're going to figure it out. Jim's going to walk in and go, out. But insecurity is a dangerous thing.
Yeah.
Because it can crush you if you let it consume you. And if you're careful, insecurity, depending on how you manage yourself, you can turn it around and become a little stronger as a result. Where insecurity is of value and of help is when you are not afraid of the truth. You're willing to look in the mirror and go, okay, I'm insecure, but where am I at? What is my value? And what can I bring to the table? Because if it's a complete fluke, and if you are faking it until you make it, uh, I think that that's a romantic, poetic way of putting a very classic scenario. Because most of us go through at some point an experience like that. For the most part, we're not really faking it. Because if you have to fake it, I think people like Jim will sniff that out.
Yeah.
He will know. And he would be right in saying, this isn't working for me, so I think you need to go. And then you accept that. So the being humble and honest without being too self-deprecating does allow you to grow. But as soon as you become overly humble, and I think they're kind of connected, truly self-deprecating, I'm really not good, I suck at this, then you run the risk of just going down this spiraling into this rabbit hole of blockage and negativity. And most artists, like anything, you have to have done a journey, gone from A to B to get to a destination, and the success of arriving at a destination to then look back and go, the journey was hell, but I made it. So now I know. So for example, I still am insecure, I guess. I have trepidation. I have moments, many moments of failure all the time. And by failure, I'm not referring to absolute catastrophic failure. I'm just saying you sit down and you start drawing, and it's like, man, I still suck as much as I did as I was when I was 5 trying to draw. But I have the experience of sucking so much that I know that the journey, I'm familiar with the destination.
Yep.
And that experience. So whenever I sculpted heads for likenesses in the toy business, because that was something I did before. So you start off with a lump of clay, miniatures, 12-inch action figure type things.
Yep.
Start off with a lump of clay and a stick, and you start massing out your egg shape. And it's like, okay, I see an egg shape, which is similar to a head. It's kind of exciting. You throw on a neck, and it's like, oh yeah, a couple little balls of clay for ears. I'm pretty good at this. You squeeze in some eyes, and you're trying to do a likeness of someone, say Dwayne Johnson, because I've sculpted The Rock a million times. And it's like, it's got the proportion of Dwayne's head. And then you start adding lips and a nose, and it's all falling apart. It looks like a mess. It doesn't look like him. It doesn't look like a human for that matter. And so when you first start sculpting likenesses, you might get to the point of holding your stick and looking at this abomination going, I'm absolutely horrible at this. And you throw it away and you reconsider a whole different career path, because I have, as a physical example for the world to see, something that I can point to and say, see how much I suck? It's right here. There's no question. And everyone would agree.
I suppose a really easy way of doing that is making Funko Pops, because it's just a square.
Yeah, but even then, I if you set out to do a Funko Pop, you would also discover that it's hard to do that, a refined, simple form. But where I was going with this, which I think is sort of obvious, is if you stick with it, because I had no choice. I was being paid and I had to deliver.
Yeah.
So I couldn't pull the plug and call up the client. Well, I guess I could have, but that's really pretty shameful. I can't do it. It turns out I suck.
Never get hired again.
While crying down the phone saying that as well. What have you done hiring me? Were you mad? This is on you. This is nothing to do with me.
Exactly. Blame them. But that having to finish it meant I was forced to follow through and get to the destination. And shockingly, it worked out. It looked like The Rock, but it was a horrible journey, I tell you. I apologize about.
I've just got these visions of like 65 different iterations of the Rock's head on sticks in varying forms of likenesses.
Yeah, like how high do you want that? How high do you want it to go? But
Imagine
in the end,
imagine if people didn't know what Neville did for a living. They called over to his house and they saw like 65 things that the Rock said in his house. They were going, anyway, I just have to suddenly leave.
I do have a funny story about that.
Yes, we need to hear it, Neville.
I'll tell it right after this. So, point being, I now have the experience of knowing that at some point in this journey, it's going to be horrible.
Yep.
And it starts off great and exciting, and all of a sudden it's like it's really hard work. And then it's really super hard work, the nuance, the detail, getting it to be just, I mean, likenesses are really, for me, difficult. But having gone through that now, if I got a call saying, hey, we need a sculpture of this particular person, can you do it? Absolutely, I can. And I know it's going to be painful. There's going to be a point where I have doubt and I want to call you up and cry on the phone and blame you for hiring me. But I think I'll be able to get it done because I've gone through that experience. And it's like exercise. You go to the gym and you start to work out. Ouch, it hurts. You don't want to work through it.
Yeah.
Should it hurt when you exercise? And then when you are done and you get into the groove, you realize, I'm so glad that I just stuck with it. And I feel better now. And I now know that I can do it. And I know that getting up in the morning and committing to putting my gym shoes on and leaving the house, all of that, I've got a million excuses as to why I should not.
Yep.
And none of them are valid. So you power through it.
Neville, can I ask you a question then? Right?
Yeah.
In terms of, say, I'm just curious now, like some of us can suffer from this as well at some point. Is your standard, your own personal standard for your work, is it to a level, and you might indeed be consciously aware of it, that if you do something and it doesn't meet that standard, you actually feel like it's a complete failure? But what you've done could actually be higher than most people's kind of like their top level. Because I know somebody said that to me before about my work. I thought I'd done something wrong. And the person said, your standard is actually so high that if you even fall off it a tiny bit, it's actually still better than most people's absolute, 100%. But because of your knowledge of what you're capable of, do you feel then at times that you might make a mistake and you go, oh God, I'm completely useless, but that's not actually the case? Like,
there's an element of that for sure. I've been asked the question, do you find it intimidating to work for some of the people that you've worked for, like Spielberg, J.J. Abrams, Cameron, all these amazing directors who are very visual directors? And a worst case scenario like Ridley Scott and James Cameron is they're both visual artists. So they can, if you're screwing up, they will grab your pencil and your paper. They will show you what you need to do. So is it intimidating? It shouldn't be. And it isn't for me, not because I don't have incredible respect for them, but because I know for a fact that the person I worked hardest for to impress is myself. Yeah. Again, not to impress myself, so I'm at the end of the day, I can gloat about my efforts. But it is kind of like you said, you have personal standards, and they're typically way higher than what the client wants. But in addition to that, you never want to. It's a risky thing if you feel like, well, my standards are so high that I don't have to work as hard when it's for someone else because my crap is going to be acceptable. And that might be. Sometimes you'll do, 3 drawings, you put them up on the wall, and one of them you like a lot, one of them not as much, and the third one probably shouldn't have put that on the wall. Oh, they picked that one. Right. That's the one that ends up on screen. So what does that mean? It means 2 things. One, you need to edit better, Neville. And 2, it means that somebody just has a different taste than you. And it doesn't mean that your taste is better. I have not made an avatar. Jim has. So what does that mean? Well, I have better ideas than Jim. That's debatable. Jim's making incredible movies. I am not.
Yeah.
So there's a reason. And it's not to say that I'm not capable, perhaps. It's just that Jim knows what he's doing and is succeeding. And I would like to think that I know what I'm doing when I'm participating in a film with Jim. But the important thing to always remember, and this goes with either a singular item that's being produced for a film or the whole film, whoever is the recipient of that product. So I'm designing a thing. I'm going to show it to James Cameron using Avatar as an example. And I'm like, yeah, I wish I had more time. It's always the case. More money, more time, more whatever. I didn't. And here's what I could do. And do you present it that way? That's the worst thing. If you go in humble, if you go in with excuses, hey, Jim, I'm really sorry. It's the best I could do at the time I had. It's kind of like, well, then I'm not interested.
Yeah.
You're admitting that you've fallen short. You don't know how somebody's going to react to your work.
Yeah.
So you put the images out. Jim looks at one and goes, that's the one. Is that the one I wanted him to pick? It matters not.
Yeah.
Matters most is you've provided a solution and answer that is satisfactory, that Jim feels good about, or whichever director. And every single thing, including the movie Avatar. I'm speculating. I haven't had this conversation with Jim, but I'm sure there are things, and I do know some details because I obviously saw the entire process, of things that didn't make it to screen, of ideas that never came to light. That's the nature of the process. The audience has no idea what they've missed.
Yeah.
And the same goes when you're providing that singular product to someone. Jim has no idea what he hasn't seen.
Yeah.
Because there are steps to drawing something and an editing process that you go through of all of your drawings. Sometimes it's good to have that sequential evolution of an idea so you can say, here's how it started and here's where I've arrived at. And then they get to be a part of the process and see some of the things that they would not have seen, the things they've missed. But for the most part, people don't know what they don't know.
Yeah.
So it's seeing Avatar, it's like, Avatar would have been so much better if you would have included that one scene that I didn't know about. You have no idea.
I think George Lucas said something about that before. He said that, like, what the final product that's on screen may only be, say, 30% of what the filmmaker intended, but it's the filmmaker's job to make audiences feel that it's 100% of what they wanted to see.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think a lot of it is budget, how much money you have for a visual effect or a set piece. So it's something that I'm also very careful to not do is backpedal and sandbag and make excuses for things that audiences don't like because they don't know why something is the way it is.
Yeah.
So a design might come out of whatever, and audiences might go, that's the most amazing thing I've ever seen in my life. It's like, okay, I wish we had more time and more money. If you only knew what we could have done. You don't, and it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
But then the counter to that is the dumbest design I've ever seen, most unfinished, unresolved, whatever it is. And you got to embrace that point of view as well, but you can't have a conversation about it because it's like, yeah, well, I didn't have the time. I was given the design brief that morning and I had to deliver that afternoon. Those
Or
are excuses.
that's what the director wanted.
Yeah, and that's just the way it is. And the majority of stuff that you see that you may love was done in haste, and stuff that you didn't like was labored by so many people. So, point in case, or case in point, excuse me, Prometheus with Ridley Scott. I worked for months on trying to crack the nut, if you will, of a few different challenges. And then we get to Ridley saying, hey, we need a look for the engineer, his biosuit. And Ridley had some ideas, which of course are incredible. And I had a different idea, which is a risky thing.
Ooh.
He wanted something, and I felt like, because I'm a fan of Alien, and it's ironic, me debating with Ridley Scott about, yeah, but you know what? Alien's supposed to be.
Not like
But
he
in
knows
my
anything
heart
or
of
anything.
hearts, he really felt like we don't want to go down the Giger path too much.
Yeah.
Been there, done that, and I get that. But it's like, but really, my opinion is that I'm going to go see this movie because it feels like your first Alien movie.
Yeah.
So it needs that. So when he said, "Can you design, the engineer's overall look?" We'd kind of established the architecture of his face and physicality, but it was the suit. So he had a list of things for me to do, and I said, "Do you mind if I bring in some alternatives? Because you got to be careful when somebody says, design me an apple, and you come in with a pineapple instead, because you felt it was better." It's like, well, bye. But he said, yeah, if you got some ideas, of course. But you also have to appreciate the fact that you're being paid to do what they've asked you to do. So any ideas that aren't what they asked you to do, they kind of have to be on your dime,
Yeah.
even if it succeeds. So I remember I did the work that night of the things that Ridley was asking me to do. And that morning, laid in bed thinking about the suit, I thought, okay, I'm going to get up a little early and I'm just going to try and knock out a couple ideas. So that morning, I think my meeting was at 9. At 7 o'clock, I'm sitting at my computer. It's a half-hour drive to Scot-Free from where I was at. And I did a 40-minute engineer sculpture in ZBrush, one design, and like a 35-minute sculpture of another design. I thought, okay, it's quick enough. It doesn't make it look like I've spent all the time on my idea. And I didn't. Just quick ideas. I brought it in and showed it to Ridley. And it was one of the rare times in my career that I had an exclamatory positive, whoa, this is it. This is it. You're done. You did it. I was like, but I remember him saying, can we send these off to the costume designer so they can finish it? I was like, I spent 35 minutes on it. Yes, a win is a win. But that's kind of the point of, you can spend months on something,
Yeah.
or minutes on something, and you just have no idea how it's going to go, and no one knows what I wasn't able to do on that suit. But to kind of punctuate and end the Prometheus suit, that was one of the greatest experiences to witness is having done a design that was fairly well thought out and conceived, and as a concept, I was able to deliver my ZBrush model to the costume group. And it's terrible that I don't have the names of the people that did the final costume, but it was one of my absolute favorite examples of a piece of concept art that was then, the baton was handed to the next runner.
Yep.
And they ran with it in my God, they made a meal out of every square inch of that suit and made it their own, but without deviating, because that's what often happens is another artist gets their hands on it. And I don't really care anymore that people do this. It's not the right thing, but I don't worry myself about it. And that is, we got this design, but I kind of feel like I have an opinion about things. So we're going to start to deviate and change. Like, do not do that because the director, whomever, has approved that design. So it's just not smart to infuse something with your opinion. Just do the job. So there's this very, very delicate path that the next artist must take in honoring whatever that was approved, but elevating it without it deviating and turning into something else. And they did that with the Prometheus suit. I think it's just such a phenomenal piece of execution. Whether you like the design, that's subjective. The execution is almost not subjective. It's what they did was incredible.
Neville, can I ask you as well? Like, we were talking just a while ago, and you were kind of mentioning, James Cameron, you were mentioning Ridley Scott, Steven Spielberg, J.J. Abrams. Like, for people like me and Mike, like, we'd probably pass out even kind of seeing these people on the street, and like you're and you're working with them, and you just seem to completely take it in your stride. And like, as I've kind of alluded to a few times, you're this very softly spoken, quietly confident individual. Again, we're not arrogant, not even remotely, not incredible or not visionary, as the book says, and things like that.
Yeah.
What do you think is your kind of key to how you relate and work well with the directors?
Thank you for that question, because that question can often be asked, what's it like to work with James Cameron or Spielberg? It must be intimidating. And sure, it can be. But I appreciate the way you crafted that question, because I think my answer actually has value, because it is the most important part of how you work with anyone in any capacity, whether you're flipping burgers at McDonald's, which I did, or whether you're sitting across from Spielberg on a production. You must be honest and sincere and consistent with how you are with people, and not change your approach because of who that person is to you and your perception of that person and their success. So how I treated my manager at Del Taco, I lied, it wasn't McDonald's, it was Del Taco. But how I treated them and how I've treated people my whole life is no different than how I conducted myself with Spielberg, for example. And so here's a story of a real thing that happened, and it's amusing but quite telling. And I'm guessing that the reaction I got, well, I'll just tell you the story and I'll explain. So myself and J.J. Abrams and Steven Spielberg are to meet to discuss the Super 8 creature. So it's very early on in the Super 8 process. And I remember getting the call saying, hey, can you meet JJ and Steven on the set of Tintin, where they were shooting, to discuss the Super 8 creature? I thought, sure. And of course, I didn't say sure, not realizing the gravity what I was going to step into. It was like, sure, hang up the phone, shit my pants, and then prepare myself. And I jest in a way, but at the same time, it's more like, wow, this is crazy that I'm going to be having this conversation with him. But the job is the job, and their job. They aren't. I can guarantee you, Steven isn't thinking, God, I wonder how impressed Neville's going to be with me when he sits across from me and he knows it's the Jaws guy, the Close Encounters guy. No, and that shouldn't be that way. But there I'm sitting across from Spielberg thinking, I wonder how impressed he is. Not the Garfield guy, the Piranha guy. Maybe he's intimidated. But I'd worked with Steven before, so fortunately there was not going to be the shock of sitting down for the first time. So myself and Steven and JJ are sitting outside having this conversation. and Spielberg has to go in and just do some stuff. And JJ says to me, "Can you believe we're sitting here with Steven Spielberg?" I said, "JJ, I'm not over the fact that I'm just sitting with you, let alone the two of you." So it's pretty amazing. So when you step back, it's incredible and it's weird and all those things. But then when you step into it again, you got a job to do.
Yeah.
And um and it's about, again, being honest. So cut to the next moment of the story, which Stephen's describing what he wants as a direction to consider. And so he's describing it and he says, "Can I just give me your sketch pad? I just want to draw this." And he starts drawing a version of what the Super 8 creature might be. And he hands it back to me and he says, "So what do you think?" I said, "Might want to keep your day job," because it was a terrible drawing. I mean, I almost couldn't understand it. And I thought to myself, because I saw his reaction, and this is where I'm personally speculating as to what's going on in his mind. He looked at me, and the look on his face said to me, "You'll never work in this town again." Because I made the assumption that I was treating him like I would anyone else.
Yeah.
And you can't be oblivious to the fact that there's a hierarchy sometimes in life, and there's a protocol in place for certain things. But I thought to myself in that moment, it's like it or leave it. This is who I am. I was joking, sort of. But what came of that, and similar interact in the dynamic I had with James Cameron and the dynamic I have with any of them, is I'm just going to be myself.
Yeah.
And I'm going to be honest. And if it turns out I'm rude and I'm trying to be funny and I'm not, those are unfortunate things. You might want to like recalibrate yourself and tune yourself in so that you can be less of a wanker. But I found that almost immediately after that moment, and again, this is my perception, Stephen felt like if he can be honest with me in that way, he's going to be honest with me. So that means I don't have another yes person.
Yeah.
Who's just going to agree with everything because I'm Steven Spielberg. And that is the point. Jim, Steven, JJ, all these guys, they hire you to do your best. I think part of being your best is being honest. And here's where you don't have to worry. If you're genuine, if you are 100% who you are, you will either be invited back or not. And everyone is living in the truth.
Yeah.
And if you find that, and this is how I treat life, relationships with people, my son, anyone. If you are 100% yourself, and it turns out that you find yourself isolating, pushing back people because of your personality, the way you are, stand in front of the mirror, metaphorically, and reevaluate. You know, can I be better? Can I rewire myself, tune myself, not change, but evolve myself to be better and articulate myself better to people? And it might just be because you're not good in front of a crowd, you're not good at a party, whatever it is. Do you want to refine that so you can be better? And the goal of any designer is to sell, to communicate ideas. And if you struggle with communication, then that's a skill set you need to work on in addition to drawing and sculpting, whatever it is. So back to your original question, my attitude is just treat people normally. And if you're starstruck because you've never met them before, okay, embrace it internally. Try not to have that be on the surface, because you got to know that it's going to make them a little uncomfortable. You know, you start doing that kind of thing, fanning your face. Oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. Yeah, that's going to make them feel like, oh, I got a fan, not a partner in this.
Yeah.
So To me, it's quite simple, but you got to read the room and know who might be comfortable or might not.
I think you like what you said as well. Like, there's a line from, say, the first episode of The Next Generation, Encounter at Farpoint, where Picard says to Riker, "If we're going to be damned, let's be damned for who we are."
Yeah.
And I think that
Mhm.
kind of goes back to kind of what you're saying. And like what you're saying then as well, Neville, is that, even though you have all these creative jobs, there's such a huge importance on kind of how you relate to people. And it's not just relating to people, say, up the ladder in terms of the likes of J.J. Abrams, Spielberg, and all that, but it's also about the people that you will work with as well. Because I know in the book you'd mentioned about, say, like leading a team, like being in charge of a team, and how you were actually going to, say, interact with those people as well. And you very much seem to have this very human approach to kind of what you do.
I try. Um, I'm very sympathetic to the art department in that I work in two polar opposite awarenesses. One of them is um, when I've been hired, or any artist has been hired to do something, it's not yours. You've been hired to realize somebody else's vision, and you've been paid to do that. So once you're given the money and you have this exchange of goods, here's the thing I made for you. Oh, here's the money that you were allowed to make that with. Both sides, if satisfied with the amount paid and the thing given, can move on and do what they want. So if I'm upset because it changes or isn't used, cutting room floor, um, and that really bugs me, then you can almost turn that around and imagine how, let's say, James Cameron finds out what I'm spending my money on, my money, the money he gave me. And he could look at it and go, oh, what a waste. I gave him that money for that thing and he spent it on books and bones. What an idiot.
Neville's bought 900 books again.
Yeah, yeah. And he might be right. He's like, you might want to invest.
Buy
But
property, not books. Yes.
yeah, especially these days, it's all online. But it that maturity of this is, I will do the best because that's the job. And when I hand you the product, it's yours. Do with it what you want. Now, the other side of that is the emotional artists, which I am as well, where you see your design disrespected. You know, it's been changed. It's been modified or not used, or no one's picking my designs, and it can hurt. That's another version of recalibrating yourself to the reality of what it is we're doing.
Yep.
So the point about, I have a certain approach to things. If I'm put into the fortuitous position of having a team, I'm very protective of that team because I want them to have the opportunity to be creatively nourished and satisfied, but also have the comfort of knowing that it doesn't matter if your design is chosen. Just enjoy the journey. It really is. That's the only thing you've got. And I find oftentimes in these kinds of conversations how much the philosophies that I've either accrued over the years in design, um, or the inverse, the experiences of life, how those have accrued over time to influence design. They're one and the same. And that is my approach to life is very much my approach to design. And that is, have the maturity of knowing that this is not mine, but I've been hired to do it and I will be compensated. And the only thing I know is the moments that I'm in that journey. The destination is unknown. Will my work be used? Will I live to the ripe age of whatever, and achieve that goal? Those we don't know. So we've all heard it. Live in the moment, carpe diem. Tomorrow's not promised, but that's so freaking true. And when you've lost a tomorrow, you've experienced a person who their tomorrows are taken away from them for whatever reason, one needs to pay attention to that and apply it to their lives, most importantly, but you can also apply it to your job. And why it's important to bring big life stuff into the job as a allegory or a metaphor is because sadly, most of us spend way too much of our lives doing a job. So you might as well figure out how you can make that job, which oftentimes isn't pleasant. And working on movies and TV oftentimes is not pleasant. Don't think, anyone, that because it is Hollywood, et cetera, that it's pleasant. It's 75% unpleasant for me. Everyone's going to have their own experience, and 25% profoundly pleasant. And there's an element of unpleasant that's profoundly unpleasant too. You know, there are awful people in every industry. It's not Hollywood. It's not exclusive to entertainment. It's exclusive to Homo sapiens, perhaps. But it's a privileged gig to be in. And if you can take your life experience and the value you have in living in the moment, living in not anticipating tomorrow, then you have a roadmap of how to enjoy your work, entertainment, working at Del Taco, whatever your job is. And that's, to me, what I find to be my probably greatest asset is a maturity that has come through years of not having the maturity, but realizing, okay, there's a way, a point of view that's so critical to have. I was just texting a good friend the other day saying, it's amazing to me that I'm in the position that I'm in, which is I receive almost daily rejections. It's like being an actor again. It's so much of what we do is being able to handle, nope, not that, not you, no thanks, and worse. And how do you live daily in that game? Because whether you're a designer in an art department, sitting at your desk, head down, doing the work, sketching things, it's the same thing as what I'm doing now, which is creating pitch decks and story ideas and scripts. They're creative things that have overt, obvious value or not, because you just hold up a picture and say, do you like it? Nope. And that doesn't mean you did it wrong. It just means that you haven't done the right thing yet.
Yeah.
And Jim once said it best after working with him for 3 years on Avatar. At the end of it, towards the end of it, he said, it was hilarious, because we were burning paper, just drawing after drawing after drawing after drawing, because you're exploring and looking for. And Jim jokingly, but quite pointedly, said, could you do me a favor and just do the right design first? And I thought, damn, I hadn't considered that.
Damn it, we've wasted 3 years when I could have just done it a lot faster.
Yeah.
Off the Amazon rainforest. God.
Yeah. But
Neville,
yeah.
Neville, I'm going to have to ask you an extremely unfair question, and you're
Yeah.
going to go, why are you asking me this? It's actually a two-part question.
Okay.
If you were to pick between all of your designs, you're there going, where's he going with this? Which is your most favorite, which has made it all the way to, say, production and is on screen somewhere? And which is the one that never made it that you really, really wish had?
Those are politically infused questions. So I'll start with the positive one first. I think one of my favorites, and it was a very uncomfortable experience too, was Super 8. And the reason why I say uncomfortable, it brings me back to something you were saying, we were talking about earlier, and that is being humble enough to say to the person that's hired you, I think it's time you let me go. because I don't think I'm getting you the answers you need.
Yeah.
And I did say that to JJ after working on it for quite a while, months. I said, honestly, if you need to go with somebody else, I totally understand, because I feel like I'm not getting it and I'm not doing what you need to be done. And it's just money. I feel guilty about the money and the time. And JJ was very gracious in saying, no, 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 stick with it. I think you can figure this out. And I'm glad he didn't fire me at my request, because I I hit that Dwayne Johnson moment where it's like, I'm just not good. Imposter syndrome, all the things at once. And it was, not at the very beginning of my career, but it was fairly early. And I stuck with it and I doubled down, and I didn't double down and, create that bottleneck experience where it's like I got so much pressure now that I'm not able to work. Excuse me. So what I did was, damn you, COVID.
We've all been there. It's fine.
Yeah. So I just worked through it and things started to click. And that was another experience of, I'm so glad I gave myself the breathing room, and JJ gave me the confidence and encouragement to stick with it, which actually took the pressure off. And it might have been the very conversation I needed to have to start coming up with the solutions, is to admit, and it wasn't a self-deprecating, I'm sorry, JJ, I suck. It was an honest admission of, I feel bad that it's been this length of time and you haven't gotten what you need. And his encouragement allowed me to kind of work through that. So that's one of the reasons why I like the Super 8 creature. And the second is, it was just a joy to be dealing with every single square inch of that creature intimately. And I personally almost cannot design without understanding everything it is I'm, as best I can, that I'm designing. So the bottoms of the feet, what is it that's underneath the feet? How do limbs work? If you're putting an elbow here versus here, when it bends, can it actually put food in its mouth? Because I did that once where I thought, oh, that's cool looking, and realized it couldn't scratch its own head if it needed to.
Like the T-Rex, then, with just two little pointless
Yeah,
arms that can't do anything.
exactly. God can make mistakes like that, but I'm not allowed. God is not under the same scrutiny as I was. But it's a joy, and again, I use the word probably too much, but it is a privilege if you're being paid to design every square inch of something and really figure it out and resolve it. And the Super 8 creature is well thought out. It's subjective, cosmetic stuff aside, I get it, but it's a well thought out, and it was a lot of fun. That journey was amazing, and I think the destination was pretty darn good too, all because of JJ's decision making and ILM's involvement. Now, a creature, and I do, out of respect to the productions, won't tell you what it is, but it's an important experience to point out, where I was working on something, and I was given one of those rare times where it's like, you do you, Neville. You do your thing. I was like, oh, amazing. And there were a couple designs that I've always wanted to do. I thought, a little risky because I'm going out there cosmetically, and I shared the design ideas and they were embraced. I was like, amazing. This is really cool. For the first time in a long time, a raw idea I've had will get to the finish line. Submitted it, sculpt is done, colors are done, it's done. And it's like, that's the design I personally wanted it to be. And it's amazing that it's sort of unaffected, unadjusted by anyone else's opinion. That was a great feeling. So then I get to see it on the big screen. I hadn't, and sometimes intentionally, if I don't need to be involved, once I hand it over, I stay out of it because I want to enjoy the movie or the TV show. Well, it came on screen, and it was a moment of I literally felt, well, you know what? I'm done doing my best for you because you destroyed it. And they did. It was awful. And I wondered how it got there, why it had to be changed into what it was, because it wasn't for the better.
Was it
And
like, was it a totally new design, Neville, or was it like your design but modified in, like, obviously in a not good way?
if it was no longer, example, Quiet Place, worked on that a lot, did some really, I felt some good design work. I enjoyed the process and working with John Krasinski, etc. In the end, they didn't use my design. It went through the ILM pipeline, and it was something else. So when I saw the movie, I was surprised that it wasn't the design I did, but I wasn't disappointed. I was like, oh, okay, they just didn't go the direction I went.
Hmm.
Totally fine. It's when, counter to the Prometheus experience, you see that your design is taken and then just bastardized. And I'm not saying that's subjectively.
No.
I'd like to think it's an objective point of view. It's like you changed it so much in its where the pivot points are for its articulation that it lost its meaning.
Yeah.
It lost its potential. And you kind of ruined what the design is. It's kind of like I hand them a, can't tell me if I can find, yeah, okay. I've designed you the perfect pair of glasses. And they're like, oh my God, this is amazing. We can't wait to use it in your movie, in our movie. And they go like this. It's like, dude, they're on upside down and backwards. What? How? And you've ruined the intention. And that's how I felt the creature looked. And I was like, why? Why did that have, there was no reason to change it. And that's the part where you go, why do I work so hard? And why do I get so
Yep.
emotionally invested in this?
Do
So
you
even, I'm sorry.
do you get a sort of not angry, but do you get frustrated when that happens? I mean, I've had that happen to me with stuff that I've worked on, and someone's taken it, and you're looking and going, "What the hell did you do, and why?" Do you get
What?
emotionally upset around it?
Yes and no. And it's based on what I was saying earlier about when you have the maturity of I've been paid.
Yeah.
So I got my cash, they got their product, and they can do with it what they want. And that's true.
Yeah.
And I'm not involved. I haven't been hired to follow through. I've just been hired to hand it over and then move
Yeah.
on to the next thing. So from that standpoint, I don't like get that in my gut. And I feel bad that some people either didn't know that the process could have been easier for them on the back end, or that they could have gotten a better product by keeping the original designer involved.
Yeah.
And those are all potentially arrogant, delusional things that I'm saying. It's like, if you would have kept me on board, that design would have been great, and your movie would have been great.
You fools! Why did you let me
Yes.
go? Why didn't you take
Right.
my design?
But at the same time, again, I also recognize that the audience has no idea
Yeah.
what it
Yeah.
was supposed to be. So it works. So it's a success. And therein lies one of the dangers. Proof that the process, which I think is dysfunctional, works. It's like, it doesn't work.
Yeah.
There's a better way. So that the mature Neville will just, it's like,
Shrug it
it's
off.
yours.
Yeah.
You purchased it and you do with it what you want. Here's where I am not happy about it. If I have been given individual credit, when I say given, because I typically don't ask, give me single card screen credit. But if I've been graciously given that credit, the designer of the creature,
Yeah.
Neville Page, and I see that that design has been changed and is not what
you
I
provided.
intended.
Yeah.
And I feel like, honestly, that my peers might look at it and go, Neville's gone off the deep end.
What were you smoking, Neville?
Oh yeah. Or Neville doesn't care, which is
Yeah.
worse. It's
Yeah.
like, yeah, I can kind of see he probably phoned it in, or he's maybe taking on too much work, whatever perception might be. And again, you can't worry about that, and I try not to. But that's where
Yeah.
I even said it on a production that was going that route. I said, do me a favor. This is your show. I don't need my name on it. And because of what you did to the design, I would actually like you to remove my
Yeah.
name from it. And that's a very risky thing to do, because that means you're telling them what you're doing sucks, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And that's c'est la vie, you know. You hopefully have carved yourself a relationship with people that you can do that in a respectful way. And I tend to think that I do approach it that way. But at the same time, there's self-preservation one has to be aware of. And when a design, I wish I could share when I'm 80, let's do this again. When it doesn't matter and I'm on my deathbed, I'll be completely honest.
I'll open the Google Calendar, Neville. I'll put in the I'll put in the invite for you.
Yeah.
But Neville, I think what you're saying, and it kind of plays back to kind of like what I've been saying about your personality the whole time. I think how open, how honest, and the integrity that you have as an individual, as an artist, and all that kind of thing means that if you're having these discussions, if you want to have your name taken off a project, I don't think you would approach this in a kind of a like angry, kind of like, explosive kind of way. I think you do it in a very kind of measured, polite, respectful way. As like, what has really struck me is when you had the conversation with JJ about the monster from Super 8, like how many people would be kind of saying to JJ, not that I've completely failed, it's just I don't think that like our visions are matching up here. And I think you do it from a very kind of, decent point of view of what matters is the actual end product, because in the end, this is a source of entertainment. This is for people to kind of embrace and enjoy. I think that human side of you, it comes true in so many of the stories that you're telling.
I suppose I can't really work any other way. And thank you for making that potential observation. I hope it is accurate. But when you're given money and you're using people's money and time, you've got a responsibility to be honest every step of the way. And this is a little bit of a deviation, but I think it's relevant. Honest design is not just answering the question as best you can of the narrative, but it's a perfect example is you've got a creature that its mouth opens and closes and has big teeth. And the visceral image of selling a creature is usually mouths open, teeth everywhere, tongue, slobber, all that stuff. And so that's kind of like the low-hanging fruit, sexy appeal of selling a design. And you show a creature in T-pose, mouth closed, not exciting, but very informative. You show the creature dynamically doing something, very stimulating and primal, but not as informative in terms of its accuracy. So I've always felt you got to sell the design by doing the imagery that's shiny. But when you close that mouth, the dentition needs to work. Either the teeth need to overlap like an alligator, crocodile, or if it's a masticating kind of grinding teeth, it needs to close, and the lips need to seal, and it needs to look amazing shut as well as primally open. So to me, that honest design means when you are done with the design, you've sold it to a big name who has the potential to give you your next job, or at least when somebody calls and say, what was it like working with Neville? And you take that design and you pass it off to Weta, to ILM, and you're out of it now. You're done. You've done your job. You've been paid. You've cashed the check, in fact. And Weta says to the director, hey, we got this design from Neville, but when you close the mouth, the teeth are sticking out all over the place, and we have to change that to work, or the jaw doesn't pivot where he had it pivot. So now when he closes the mouth, it's an underbite, and it looks ridiculous because the design wasn't finished, ergo it wasn't honest.
Yeah.
So if you're not honest with your design in every way, it's going to bite you in the ass at some point down the road. So not only do you have the responsibility of providing an honest, completed, resolved answer,
Yeah.
not just cosmetically, but in terms of its biology and functionality and all this stuff. Um, there's a subtext to it all, which is a byproduct, I think, of if you've achieved an exciting design for the audience later on. If that design is exciting, and the assumption is that it is because the director approved it, it then goes to the next baton relay race persons, and when they get it, and it's just like a silly design or a lackluster or unresolved, think of how they feel. It's like, now my day job is retopologizing a garbage design or fixing this person's work.
Because they didn't do it
The
right the first time round.
Well, there's that, but there's also the unspoken, unintended importance of the design needs to be great for the audience to enjoy it, but it's kind of important that the design is great and interesting and intriguing for the people that are going to take it through. They're going to spend a year. I spent 40 minutes on the Prometheus suit, and then teams of people spent months.
Yeah.
But they were excited because the design was good enough. And that's kind of an interesting thing that I'm going to go back to one of your questions about, do you ever get intimidated? Wasn't the exact question, but, working with these big names. At the end of the day, the most intimidating thing is just you feeling like you've done your best.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter that it's for a Spielberg or Ridley Scott. It matters that it's the best you can do for Piranha, the movie. So any client that hires me gets my best foot forward because it
And
just
never,
should be.
and never just in terms, so like a lot of the creature designs you've done have been kind of original designs and things like that. Going on to Discovery, you had to redesign Klingons. And
Mhm.
like,
My
there's going to be
favorite subject.
there's 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 going to be a situation whereby you're taking a massively established species who's obviously changed from the original series into the movies, into the next generation already, and you're putting a new slant on it. And like, it's absolutely going to be the case that a lot of people won't be happy about it. People will be happy about it, but people won't. How did you handle that? Because I know that when you were kind of like working with, say, Brian Fuller, updated designs and things like that, what was in your head, kind of in terms of, obviously, look, I know you by now that you would say, I'm going to do the best I can do and I'm going to be happy with that. But did you let any of that seep in terms of like, there's going to be a lot of people, no matter what I do, that will not be happy with my work?
Star Trek is uh, very vulnerable to that kind of criticism because the canon is established. I'm a guest passing through for a period of time. Granted, it's been a long period, but I still consider myself a privileged guest to be associated with the show, providing um, solutions for a very established, very, and I say this with respect, opinionated audience, and a very informed audience, more informed than myself. So when it came to the Klingons, it started with J.J. Abrams' Klingons in the first film, and very excited to be a part of it. Interestingly enough, they ended up just being covered with a helmet, so we never had to really design anything but more than a goatee. So when we got to the Klingons in Darkness, then we got to really have the conversations about how different they would be, et cetera, et cetera. And the idea of bald Klingons, I don't want to say that was my idea because I really can't remember honestly. But let's say it wasn't my idea. I certainly embraced it because I thought, how cool would it be to see a bit more of that anatomy? And Christopher Plummer was a bald Klingon. There's been a few others, not many. And I thought, well, you remove the hair, it gives you an opportunity to play sculpturally with what's going on there. So I love that opportunity, and I love the idea of embellishments, of piercings and adornments. So the JJ ones were, the controversy there was how I smoothed things out, and the fact that we removed the hair and made him bald. Whenever you see the artwork that I've done where I have hair versus not hair on the exact same thing, it's a huge difference. Picture me as Fabio, the Italian with the long blonde hair. It's laughable to imagine that because most people just know me as.
Oh God, my eyes. Oh God, I can't.
Yeah.
Oh God, I need to wash my eyes out after this.
But it's like anyone who gets a haircut, there's that moment of, whoa, you got a haircut.
Yeah.
And then, 15 minutes later, you forget that they got a haircut.
Yeah.
So something as iconic as a Klingon to not have hair, it's a shock. And I get that. So I think we just barely survived it on JJ's. Then we cut to Discovery, and Brian Fuller has, these great ideas, some crazy ideas. And this is a perfect case of the ridicule. I carry the title of lead creature designer, I think, Discovery at the beginning at least, which means when people are curious, oh, who designed my beloved Klingons? Oh, that's Neville. I wonder where he lives. Because there were some pretty upset people. And the thing that I think is important is to not defend my honor so much in that, saying it wasn't my fault. There's all these other things that it's a collective effort. And A, I didn't ask for the Klingons to be in Discovery. B, I didn't ask for the Klingons to be bald or hairy. I'm doing what I'm told. But at the same time, I'm also trying to guide it and get it to the place where it will work. Did we achieve it? Some will say absolutely not, and others will say, it's a pretty cool departure.
Yeah.
The biggest problem was no hair, because when you see hair on say the worst version of a Klingon that we did, you would be like, oh, that's totally a Klingon. So it's pretty jarring to not see it. Now on the female Klingons, I personally pushed for something and tried something with Mary Chieffo's makeup that I think we lost control of, with the length of the head and how pointy it got, etc. I'll take responsibility of all of it, quite frankly, just because it's, I was not the last one to touch it, but there was a lot of things where it's like, do I agree? Not entirely, but with TV, you've got the opportunity to get feedback.
Yeah. And
I think it's dangerous. I'm going to go there and say this in the fear of being wrong. Do you remember when Sonic the Hedgehog first movie was coming out?
Oh, the trailer.
That god-awful child-looking like Sonic. Yes.
Correct. And the audience was pissed.
Oh, yeah.
My attitude is, don't go see it.
Yeah.
Somebody for quite a long period of time felt that was the design.
Yeah.
That's their choice. And if the movie fails because it was a bad choice, so be it. But I really felt like it's a slippery slope if you start listening to too many voices and altering the vision. Now, Sonic, because I have a 5-year-old, I've watched the movie, and I'm fine with what it is now. I can't remember what it was before. I think they did make it better. I think
they completely remodeled Sonic.
Yeah. So there's a lot of lessons to be learned from that. But the one lesson that I think is important to pay attention to is, at what point do you listen to the audience?
Yeah.
And at what point do you just go, this is my vision?
Yeah.
as a director in particular. And if you don't like where this is going, then you don't have to go see it. And it's so often the case of every single teaser that comes out. It's like, oh my God, Ben Affleck as Batman, that's going to suck. Oh my God, so-and-so as the Joker, that's going to be ridiculous. Every movie that has a teaser gets that.
Yeah.
And if what I think is great though is that certain producers, directors have the strength in their vision that they're like, okay, we hear you. It's premature, this opinion.
Yeah.
Just wait for it to come out. Just wait. And I think that I would like to think it's not happening as fast as I think it should, that audiences will be learning their lesson and reacting so quickly at very little information, and then having a very strong opinion about being uninformed. I would like for people to think, let me just wait and see.
Yeah.
So having this, was it not even Ben Affleck and Batman where people were saying we don't want him again,
Yes.
and there were petitions?
Yeah.
Oh, I think
it was.
Robert Pattinson got it as well. But I remember, like with Star Trek 2 and Star Trek 3 came out. Well, I don't, because I wasn't even born when Star Trek 2 came out, and same with Star Trek 3, I was like 1. But they were saying that like the death of Spock, people are up in arms against it, saying this is outrageous. Then the destruction of the Enterprise in Star Trek 3. But after the movies came out, the reaction was, oh, we didn't know that you were going to do it like that. If we knew that, we'd have actually onboarded. And as you said, Neville, the risk you run if you listen to too much of the fans is that if you have 1,000 fans and they don't like something, not all those 1,000 fans are going to have a kind of a consensus on what they want. So you could go back to the drawing board and you might please a quarter of them, and you still have three quarters who are there going, you got it wrong the first time, you now got it wrong the second time. So where do you draw the line?
You'll get it wrong every time.
Yeah.
Guaranteed. And you'll get it right every time. Guaranteed. So it's the hardest thing. And my exposure level these days is so much higher than it's ever been before. Like I mentioned, I get these rejections daily. So either that means I truly do suck at what I'm doing, or it's just not right for that person. So think of it in these terms: dating. If you're a single person and you have aspirations for another person, and you have a look or whatever, a list of things that you want in that relationship, you start the dating process.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're familiar with the dating process, I'm less familiar these days, but my recollection is it's painful because so much of it is no. And so much of it is intimidating. And then you, at some point in your life, you end up married with a family. Someone likes you the way you are. So when I send out stuff and I get a lot of no's, does that mean that I am bad? It's possible. And I have to be careful to not have the arrogance and delusion of saying, you know what, my stuff is good, you just don't see it.
Yeah.
Because it might also be that, well, my stuff has potential to be good, I'm just not there yet, so I got to work on it some more, whatever it is. But what I have arrived at is truly a state of mind of, I'm almost uncomfortable saying this out loud in a recording, but
we can edit it out, and you can say it, and Mike can just bleep the whole sentence.
I think what's important is kind of like when I'm showing my portfolio to people, to students, aspiring artists, showing just final images, just showing scenes from movies is of no help. Showing the raw sketches that kind of suck, that get you to where it is, that's the real stuff. That's the honest stuff. So where I am at today, and this, again, 30 years from now, when we're interviewing me on my deathbed and I'm more honest, the honesty I'm going to give you now is I can't necessarily concern myself with what other people think.
Yeah.
I pay attention to, not interested in here's why. I read your script and I didn't like these scenes. And here's why I believe in what I'm saying. and you just said it a moment ago, Show, is that you show it to 1,000 people. 1,000 people will have varying opinions. I've shared scripts and pitch decks and all that lately a lot, and I've gotten feedback from people I respect saying, oof, I don't know about that story. Feels like it's been done before, and I wouldn't suggest that you do this and that. Show it to another group of people that are also in the business. They're not like unrelated points of view. That is such a unique story that I've never seen before. Huh? I was just told the opposite a second ago. I love the fact that you want to do it in black and white. That's going to make it unique and exclusive.
Yeah.
Huh? Okay, so basically what I'm getting is everyone has an opinion. People love it. People hate it. Who's the last person that really knows its potential, its truth, and can see the final product? I'm the only one.
Yeah.
And therefore, right or wrong, you have to believe in yourself. And I am the first person to say, whenever I hear other people try and give motivational speeches about, you got to believe in yourself. And if you just believe in yourself, you can achieve anything. No, that's not true. That's a cliche romantic commentary that gets people into trouble. You got to know when to pull out too. You got to know when it's not working for you and just stop. Perseverance is a huge skill, if it's a skill to have. The resilience of taking the hits and still staying with it. It always comes down to the only person, when you're in a room by yourself creating stuff, you've only got yourself to rely on for guidance. And once you say, hey, what do you think of this design? Because I've lost perspective. And your 5-year-old says, it's amazing, Daddy. It's like, okay, good. I'm doing the right thing then. Carry on. That might not be the right opinion to keep you going. So you've got yourself, and you have yourself at 2 a.m, and you need yourself to be able to evaluate and be honest and either say, you're kind of sucking right now, or don't worry about it, man. You've got it. This is the right thing to do. Just, be strong in your convictions and your beliefs. And in time, like dating, because you are a jeans and a t-shirt kind of person, you realize, I think I'm sending the wrong message. I might need to shave. I might need to bathe and put on a tie because that's kind of what the market wants from me. So you might want to recalibrate yourself because you've gotten enough feedback to start to make appropriate assessments of what you're doing. But like I say, the only person that I can believe in at the moment is myself. That's not to say I don't listen. I listen a lot, and I look in the mirror a lot, going, "Is this the right thing? Are you doing the right thing?" But the answer is always, I'm the only one that really knows, and I'm the only one that can take the data, conflicting data, and try and make it work. So I better have conviction in what I'm doing.
Yeah. And Neville, I have to ask you this question then, because you've referenced it a few times, so I'm really curious what the answer to this is. And I could see it in your eyes, you're there going, what is this question gonna be? Oh my God. I'm hoping
Guinness has gone flat.
You're there going, I hope Orion comes in and asks me for those batteries again. Where's he gone?
I'm gonna send him a text.
You say you get rejections every day. When was the most recent time, not any details, when was the most recent time you got rejected?
Yesterday at about 12:30 in the afternoon. See, I don't care. I remember the exact time. I was standing in the kitchen, and I
knew exactly when and where I was and how much it hurt. Yep.
It hurt so much.
And I went straight to the shower to have a cry because the water hides the tears.
It does. It does. The acoustics make it sound like I can sing. No, it was yesterday, and dare I say today as well. And it's potentially going to be perceived as dramatic,
Did they come back and like tell you no twice, Neville? Did they tell you no yesterday and say, we'll just come back here and remind you that we said no yesterday?
Without me even asking. By the way, yesterday at 12:30, we really meant no. Don't know what you've been thinking since then. Sorry, I would have picked up my phone.
Have you been crying?
I've been in the shower the entire time.
Trying to scrub the sense of failure off myself. Unclean, right. Unclean.
That's right. My Scotch Brite pad. But truly, when you're trying to sell stuff, and I'm in the IP business at the moment, because of the strike and the fact that there's just been no work going on.
Yeah.
What to do with your time, and that is, try and take yourself to reinvent yourself, take yourself to the next level, whatever the goal is. So, I've completed a few pieces. Some have interest. I believe in them, and I put them out there. And to be more specific, I'm either sharing an idea with my agent saying, hey, here's this idea for a TV series. And they will say, okay, we like it. We know some people that we can share that with. They'll send it out. And then you're like, oh, that's great. There's somebody that might just open the email and go, oh, this is a cool idea. And you always hope that, somebody finds your work of interest. But not only is it more than likely going to be a no, that's just the odds.
Yeah.
I'm going to buy a lotto ticket. What are the chances I'm going to win? Pretty slim. So do you take that personal? No, it's just those are the odds. But what makes it hurt and sting is just like with a drawing that you do, a design that you do and present on a wall. So you've spent all weekend, personal time, drawing and sketching and rendering and, all these things. And it's a damn good design. You love it. You put it on the wall, 60 hours of graphite pencil work. The director comes in to review work, and let's pretend that this is the presentation. And they're like, nope, 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 nope. There's nothing here I like. That quick.
Yeah.
Or they walk into the room, had this happen, walk into the room at the doorway, open up the doorway and go, nope, there's nothing. And you're like, but I didn't even get a chance to explain it to you. I spent hours on this.
They don't care.
None of that matters. Yeah. But it does sting if you lose sight of, when you're looking at something, whether you like it or not. I can go through an art book and just buzz through the pages to know that I love it or I'm not going to buy the book. Yet every single page is, a month's worth of work that somebody put into a piece of art. And I flippantly just go, nope. Well, because I know for me that I'm not interested. So when a director comes in and doesn't even notice your work, well, that's okay. That's just the way it is. And you can't take that personal. But there's an element that when you send your soul and your heart and your brain out there, and you really do like what you have done, and the response is not a description as to why they don't want it, because that would be helpful.
Yeah.
Here's why you suck. Instead you get,
I put in the bullet points for you why you suck as well.
Yeah, please. I would prefer it actually, but you get NO and saying, damn, no without a reason. So I'm the only one that is going to know how to work with that information, which is very, very limited.
Yeah.
So rejection, learning how to utilize rejection and to understand its value is a tricky one. And it comes with time. But you cannot be defensive about rejection, because you got to be open to being wrong and balance that with the conviction of, I think I'm right though, and I'm just going to forge ahead. And, seeing other writers, seeing other directors, ones we know and ones we don't, talk about their experiences, and you realize I'm not so unique. The experiences I'm having are just like theirs. Martin Scorsese, and talking about films that he's done, it took 12, 15 years to get it to the point where a studio would consider it. It's like, you? Wow. I'm effed.
Neville, we've two questions left for you. One of them is I warned you I'd ask you about this before we started recording. There was a certain story in your book that Mary Shifo had to do a certain scene in Star Trek Discovery,
Yes.
and I believe there was a discussion in a diner about it. Could you inform us a bit more about this, please?
Your setup makes it provocative. But it
Hang on
actually,
a second. This is a setup from your book, I might add.
yeah, no, granted. But the reason I say it is provocative more than it actually is because I've actually given you the answer in terms of my approach to design, which is to truly understand. So there's two things here going on in terms of this story. The first is, why is Neville having lunch with one of the actors? That's like the first question that most people who don't know would just go, oh, I guess that's standard. It is not.
No.
And it kind of should be. If I am designing your thing, but between me and you are a series of people, and then we're going to have the game of telephone, and it's going to be changed, the correspondence between the two. I say, here's the design. Can you convey that to the production designer, and the production designer to the director to the actor has a response, and I'm like, wait a minute, but I don't understand that response. Did you ask them? Well, let me just check. It's like, come on, this is ridiculous. So one thing that I continue to try and do is, if you're going to have me involved in a production, let me help you achieve the best results we possibly can by you not having to worry about the nuance of questions and answers. Let me just go direct. And that's a little, it's easier now because I have enough under the belt to point to, enough successes to say this has worked. So when we get an actor of name, and my first question is, can I have their phone number, please? Because I'm going to need to talk to them. Like, excuse me, creature designer guy, go back to your hole and draw some pictures.
And turn off the light when you're finishing the room as well.
That's right. Yeah. Leave your time card in your slot forever. But it's more a case of having gotten more and more involved with the process of makeup design in particular, where I know that an actor is we want them to wear scleral contacts. And that's like my favorite thing is I would say in production, okay, before you hire this actor who's going to be wearing a lot of makeup, do we know that they're comfortable with it? Oh yeah, they said they were. It's like, okay, but do we know? Because there's been many times when people think that having a nose glued on, how hard can that be? And for some people, just a little nose prosthetic can feel claustrophobic.
Yeah.
Or I don't like being in the chair at the beginning of the day before any other actor comes in. And then I'm in the chair at the end of the day getting it removed. And there's glue and there's people in my face and there's COVID at the time. So there's a lot of other questions that you want to have with your actor, and almost trick questions, so that that they may not know that they're answering, because claustrophobia is a difficult thing to predict. And I've had so many actors say, I can do it. And then you do it. And then in the middle of a shoot, they start to have a panic attack. And then it's a mess. It's a huge mess. Not just the makeup, but the money that was spent on that day. We've established a shot with the main cast. So once you've seen that happen, I can then explain to an executive producer, it would benefit us all if you involve me early with the writers and with the actor to have the conversation. You don't have to worry about a thing, because I'm good with communicating with actors until I tell them to keep their day job. And I'm rude because I'm honest. I'm just me. But
wait a second. That's got to be the name of Neville's next autobiography. I'm just me. And then in brackets underneath it, don't quit your day job.
We'll make that as the description to this video.
Written on his deathbed.
30 years
so
time.
which would be in 30 years time.
Might be less at this rate. But the important thing was I've achieved consistency with being given that opportunity to talk to the actor.
Yeah.
I don't ask for it on everyone. I ask of it where it makes sense. And so having that ability to communicate with the actor what it is they are comfortable with and not comfortable with allows the designer to accommodate the reality,
Yeah.
as opposed to, here's a giant rubber head we're going to glue onto you. Enjoy. So, for example, Doug Jones, having an opportunity of having known him before Discovery and being able to talk to him about the design.
Yeah.
And quite honestly, I even said to him, before I present any designs to the decision makers, you get to participate in what it is you're going to be doing, because you're going to be wearing this a lot. It ended up being a lot more than, thank God, Discovery was successful enough. He's been wearing that makeup quite a bit as Saru. But I wanted
Those
him.
poor shoes.
Yeah, that wasn't me. But I wanted Doug to have the opportunity to give his feedback on the cosmetic, but mostly what is it you need to do your best. And that's such an important collaboration. And when he got what he felt would work for him, then I would share that with the producers, because that's the honest design. And that goes back to what I said earlier. A dishonest design is one that I don't really consult with the actor, and they're forced to do. So the point being is, when Mary was going to become a Klingon, I wanted to meet with her just to say, hey, what do you feel like you need? Because it's a big makeup, Mary. It's going to cover every square inch of you. So we had a relationship already of communicating. And in the end, the makeup, the design needed to be what the design is, and she had to wear it. But then the beauty of TV is that, a new episode comes up and we're reading the script. I'm like, whoa, there's a sex scene. I wonder how much we're going to see. And so I talk with the powers that be that know what they're going to put on film. Say, how much of the body are we going to see? Are we going to see bare breasts? Are we going to see nipples? Are you going to keep the camera above? What are we doing here? So once I understand the parameters, I'm either going to address nipples or not. And as maybe silly as that may sound, it's a very, very, very important thing. I'll go here. I was hired to do a job that involved female genitalia in a respectful way. It was a birth scene, giving birth to something. Obviously, they needed to be able to give birth to something, and it had to be, reset and retake. So it couldn't be several mothers lined up in labor. So they needed a gynecologically accurate female anatomy that would function in terms of, pushing, crowning and pushing through the vaginal canal. It's like, okay, I get that functionally. And I really enjoy that challenge of how do I design and sculpt and help build this gag. But the question comes up, what kind of vagina are you thinking? Like, excuse me, but just give us a female. So yeah, but they come in all shapes and sizes. I've gone online and I've looked at a couple things here and there in my research, and there's not just one version. So you need to tell me what it is you want it to be.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden there's a conversation happening that people didn't anticipate. And who's going to send a graphic image of a vagina in this world of being PC? I'm asking the producers, send me a bunch of pictures of women. And they're like, there's no way. Just give us. It's like, yeah, but you got to be specific about the kind that you want.
Yeah.
And I wasn't kidding. It's about being efficient.
Yep.
and clear. I wasn't trying to be funny. It's like, you tell me how you want your labia, and I will address it accordingly. And so the same thing came up with boobs. It's like, just design a naked breast. It's like, what kind? Pendulous, large, small, medium? What cup size are we talking about? What kind of nipples? And because I've done this many times in my career in terms of dealing with human anatomy and things that are, make you go, hee. I'm less of the hee about it, more like, okay, we need to grow up right now and talk about nipples.
Yeah.
Because none of us want to get in trouble by doing something gratuitous or something wrong. There's a million ways you can go it. So I thought, well, the person I care about the most is the person who's going to be perceived as a naked Klingon. So I called up Mary and I said, hey, I got the brief. I understand what the scene is. Can we talk? And she said, hey, let's get together for lunch. So I blame her. So myself.
See, she said it was you. She said it was all.
Yeah, well, she's a liar. She's a liar.
I'll just have to hang on a second. I'll consult something that will tell me the exact truth of what happened in that situation.
Those are words. Those are words.
Those are words.
So we got together with another Klingon, and the three of us just chatted about what their vision was, particularly Mary and I. And I was saying, what you don't know, Mary, is what a designer puts into the design. So you don't know what to use. So let me explain to you all the features and functions of the Klingon so that you know, and then you can tell me what feels best. So what I wanted to articulate to Mary was that you weren't just given a rubber head with ridges. There are things about it that you can, and you don't have to, you can use as motivations for your performance. And that's where I think the acting experience really lent itself to being of value, was my acting experience and my engineering experience of understanding form follows function, and the necessity of having details on something that aren't superfluous. So I explained to her, I said, at the back, right about here, there's a bump with a line and a dot. It's kind of a pheromone gland that the Klingons have. And that was always the intention, that is why it is there. And so we're sitting in a very busy lunch place. So it's like, I'm going to act out having sex with a Klingon for you. So I'll try not to moan. But I said, you might find it interesting to rub your forearms on these glands and then bring it down on your mate and rub it on them. It could be an unusual and sensual way to have this intercourse. Or you might find that doing this, crossing yourself and putting it out, it's a thing that's there. You can use it or not. We talked about the double nipple thing because Klingons are known to have redundant organs. Do we want to go there? We talked about how there's sensory pits, which they're much like a python. These sensory pits are from front to back, and maybe that's another thing that she will stroke the glands of the male Klingon here and just kind of hold it above her head. Why that's interesting and of value is because it gives the performer the opportunity to say, you're freaking me out, Neville, in this restaurant, and none of that's interesting at all. Or
I just want to eat my burger. No.
yeah, or dine and dash. Just gonna run to the bathroom real quick.
Bye.
What'd I say? Or it gives an actor the opportunity to go, I didn't know that that's what that was. I thought those were just like bumps or ear holes or something. But now that I know, I have stuff I can work with. You give an actor a pocket watch or something. Now they got a thing to work with. But if you're a costume designer, you know why that pocket watch is there. And then you can have a conversation with the actor and say, this pocket watch was your grandfather's. Oh, I got history. This is something I can work with. I'm always going to have my thumb on it, and it's my nervous tick, whatever you provide for the actor in terms of usage. So that's where, for me, the value of talking and collaborating with the actor if you're having these collaborations before you're done with the design, they might just say, hey, Neville, wouldn't it be cool if there was this tendril? And like, oh my God, that's amazing. Let me add that. So we were past that. And I was telling her what exists on the design that she could use or not. So that was how it went. And it was a little When Harry Met Sally, I think a couple times where I was the one, like, oh, trying to explain and then realizing, well, whatever.
And if Neville tried to go into that diner ever again, there's a big picture of him on the wall that says, "Do not admit this
Barred
man
for life."
Yeah, do not serve him the mancha. Something went wrong.
So just before we ask you the last question, I have one. It's not Star Trek related, but did you wish Terra Nova got a second season? I loved that show, and I was gutted when it got cancelled. I actually have one of the ID cards somewhere.
Really?
Yeah, I love that show.
Terra Nova, that's a pretty special experience for me, just because, one, who doesn't like dinosaurs? I think there's few that don't. So being given the opportunity to work on a dinosaur film was really cool.
Slashers are awesome.
Oh, I'm glad you said that. I love them. They were. It was a little bit too quick pace for me, and that's not because they were quick. I just wanted to have more time. And even with 65, I was like, I wish I had more time to really evolve these things. But Terra Nova, the saddest thing was that none of us got to take it to where we thought we could take it. And given the second season, given a bit more cash for some of the effects, practical and digital, I think would have done wonders for it. But Terra Nova, it was a stepping stone for other projects that I had, and working on 65, I had a bit more in my portfolio to justify being able to design a dinosaur or two. Working with Steven again was great. And ironically, in the first conference call, I remember it vividly. It was a group of us in this room, and on the phone was Steven Spielberg and his dinosaur guy, Jack Horner, if you know of him. And Jack Horner was the consultant on Jurassic Park and subsequent Jurassic Parks and Jurassic Worlds. And he's a real live dinosaur guy. And I knew of Jack Horner before, probably had to be from Jurassic Park. Crash McCurry and Jack Horner, Chris Swift, and I'm leaving out names, my apologies, but those three were quite pivotal in the look of the dinosaurs design in Jurassic Park. So when I heard Jack Horner on the phone, I was like, and that's the thing about what excites you, what celebrity excites you. It's like Steven Spielberg, yes. Jack Horner, oh. I was really excited about that. And what's so fun is just recently I reached out to Jack because of a project that we've been developing, and I'm gonna tease. The project is called the Museum of Wonder, and it's a pretty awesome show. I say with confidence and conviction. And it's a unscripted TV show that is a hybrid of Mythbusters meets Cosmos meets How Things Work. And it's all about, we curate a group of really amazing minds to come in and discuss a question of the day. And that question can be, what would dinosaurs be like today if they didn't become extinct? And that was a question I had. So I thought, let me call up Jack Horner and see if he'd be interested. So it gave me a chance to reconnect with Jack and talk about dinosaurs again, and stay away from any questions he might have about 65, Oh, we got bad connection, Jack. I can't quite understand.
Going through a tunnel here, Jack. Unfortunately, I'm going to lose you.
Yeah, well, tunnel. Well, the books are different tunnel. But no, I miss what that show could have been as well.
Yeah, it's a shame. I mean, there was a petition done for it to recently for it to be redone for a second season.
That's
But
okay when fans do that.
yeah.
Bring it back. We like that
It was
versus
a great show. It really was.
yeah.
So, right, last question for you then. Super, super easy. Won't take any thought whatsoever. I hope.
We're
Neville
good at
Page,
this.
what does Star Trek mean to you?
The um well, there's two ways to answer that. There's the experience of Star Trek as an employee involved in it, and then there's a fan of Star Trek who enjoys the narrative. And I can give you a very brief answer on the first one, which is it's employed me.
Yeah.
It's kept the bills paid till recently. Damn strikes. It's afforded me some really wonderful opportunities creatively. It's afforded me some opportunities I did not anticipate in terms of challenges, whether it be, oh, that's a hard thing to design, or the ridicule that comes from the public. And I mean this with all my heart and in the most positive way, but even the nastiest of comments has provided me something of value. Whether it just slowly makes you stronger,
Yeah.
Through not becoming callous and building a brick wall, but understanding hateful remarks are coming from a passionate place. I still feel bad for people that do this, and I'm not going to make excuses for the negative criticism that people feel so comfortable to sling. I wish that more people would take pause and really think about that commentary. I'm fortunate to be robust enough that I can take a lot of it with a grain of salt, negative and positive. You're the greatest designer that's ever lived. You don't know me. You're the worst designer that's ever lived. You don't know me. And I appreciate the passion behind both. Sidebar, I I yearn for the time when humanity has evolved on the internet to be kinder and more empathetic. You can say all the nastiest stuff you want about my designs, whatever. But when a young kid posts a picture of themselves or posts whatever, and you see these nasty comments, oh, you must be a Trumper. It's this immediate degradation into some very dark things that has become a habit of the human condition.
Yep.
You put it out there, I have the opportunity to crap all over it. You're a celebrity, you put yourself out there, I can now be cruel and critical of you. No, you're a dick.
Yeah.
And it's just not, I apologize if I shouldn't have said that on your
No.
But I believe that to be true. It's like you got to work on yourself. And most people, not most, there's a lot of people that don't have the wherewithal to work on themselves, and I'm sad. You're born with a predisposition. You got a chemical. You're just built that way,
Yep.
and it's unfortunate that you may not be able to see it. I said horrible things when I was in kindergarten. I'm sure, first grade, second grade, but over time, I think we all hopefully get a chance to go, oof, I wish I could go back to whoever that kid was that I was so cruel to in first grade and apologize, because I've grown from that.
Yeah.
I
So
think
should
actually,
people
just on that point, actually, I saw a funny meme recently, and it basically said the person in this world that I have least in common with is the person who wrote my Facebook post updates 10 years ago.
Yeah. Canceling people because of past errors and indiscretions is an interesting thing. You should be held accountable.
Yeah.
Absolutely. But you should also be allowed permission and support to course correct, as opposed to just being canceled. And for those that have done something wrong and either their apology is not genuine, not by perspective, but actually isn't genuine, and we can kind of tell. Or for somebody that we know it has been caught. And most people apologize only when they've been caught.
Yep.
So that's something to pay attention to. But for those that have made a slur in the past, but have learned from it, kudos. Let's embrace that. Let's embrace growth as opposed to you made a mistake that long ago, you're dead to me. And we're gonna do a witch hunt and we're gonna take you down. That's a lot of what we see today, and I wish that over time people get better at being more empathetic. I've forgotten the question. Oh, Star Trek, yes. What does it mean to me? So, great experiences, good or bad. They're both valuable, and I'm so grateful to the friends and family that I've made through the experience. And the thing about that I must point out, some production is toxic. It's bad because either it usually starts at the top. If you're not a very good executive in charge, you pull together, you amass people that are of like minds. And if not of like minds, are just so afraid that they conduct themselves a certain way. If you work on a JJ production, you're going to find that everyone's happy. Not everyone, probably, but he just, because JJ is such a good guy, he surrounds himself with like minds.
Yeah.
So when you're on a JJ set, man, it's fun. It really is just such a pleasurable experience. And the actors that are brought in, they're similar in the mindset. I think that's one of the greatest things that Star Trek as a company, as an IP, as a business also does, is it creates a beautiful infrastructure of like minds that know the narrative is bigger than them, the whole Roddenberry mission.
Mm-hmm.
That's the greatest thing. So from that standpoint, before Star Trek was an opportunity for me to work on, I was just a fan of the original series, Shatner and whatnot, loved it. And then Next Generation, as a more mature adult, watching Picards and Rikers, etc., do their thing and like really enjoying the storytelling I just remember communicating with my buddy Scott after watching an episode. I think I was pretty religious about it. Whatever the day was, Friday nights, I'd watch it, and I would have these conversations about some of the writing is so damn profound, and what they're saying. It's science fiction and pew 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 on occasion, but the stories that are being told, I get and I love. I get its relevance. I didn't understand it all. I didn't mean to imply that I get it. I understand the intention that it's so much more than just entertainment. So for me, the fact that so many of the stories try to offer a sense of hope, with direction. So some movies, some stories will paint a picture of, life can be good if we're all good to each other. It's like, oh, okay, I get it. Good message. But what Star Trek writers and their mission statement tends to do is offer actual usable tools in addition to the message. And like you said, and I'm going to ask that you say it because you have it down, but the paraphrasing of, if we're going to go down, we're going to go down in truth. What was it? The line that Picard and Riker had?
If we're to be damned, let's be damned for who we are.
Yeah.
So a great line. And if you resonate with that line, you have a tool for how to be in your life. So it's not like, God, if I'm ever up against a Borg ship, I know what to do. The greatest thing is that whole allegory metaphor of Star Trek. It's like, you know what? I had an argument with my boss, and if I'm going to be damned, and you find that there's use in your life, and I think that's why Star Trek fans including myself, are so passionate, and feathers get ruffled when things are altered. It's like this is my Star Trek. Most other productions, I would say, no, it's not yours. No, it's the producers, it's the people crafting it. It's not yours.
Yeah.
It takes a while before it's yours, but Star Trek is unique in that it's kind of yours. And I get to play in your sandbox for a period of time that I'm allowed. And I must assimilate and respect that I'm in your world. And I'll bring to it what I can. But I'll always try to respect what it is that are your expectations out of it. So some of the growing pains of that would be Klingon from Discovery to Ferengi of Picard.
Hmm.
I knew that when we were doing the Ferengi, that it had to be, you had to be able to see it and go, that's a Ferengi.
Yeah.
Slightly changed, but mostly changed because the materials, the 4K of viewing, the technologies of makeup, fabrication, sculpting, the talents behind all that have evolved. Michael Dorn as a Klingon. What could I possibly, Neville, bring to the table? Not a lot. That needed to be done so that when the audience sees the new makeup of a Klingon worn by Michael as Worf, how much should I change?
Yeah.
Close to nothing.
Yeah.
We refine what it is. We polish the apple that's been established. And that's where I have great pride of having been involved with Star Trek, both as a employee and a fan, is getting to participate in attempting to sustain what is great about Star Trek. And whether it's because I'm just built that way, but anything I do in terms of crafting IP, it must be entertaining so you can get people to go and see. But if you have a great message, I hope it's great. If you're given the privilege of having your story be out there so that hundreds, possibly thousands, potentially millions of people will see it, it's no longer a privilege, it's now a responsibility.
Yeah.
That you better have something to say. And you better find a way to get people to come and see what it is you have to say. So you're straddling this fence of, I got to entertain, but there's got to be value to that entertainment, because otherwise it's empty, and it can be fun. And I often make this parallel of food and entertainment. A Big Mac, a burger, you know exactly what you're going to get. And if I go into McDonald's and they've changed the recipe, I'm going to be pissed.
Yeah.
Because I was expecting that exact flavor. I know that if I eat a lot of it, it's not going to be good for me, but it's okay on occasion.
Yeah.
And it's exactly what I want. But there are moments where I want to go and experience some kind of hybrid French cuisine that is artful and experimental and provocative. But I have to be prepared for that. So when you're creating entertainment, there are times when it has to be a Big Mac and you have to satisfy that expectation. And then there are other times where I think, this is my preference, you tell people you got a Big Mac, they come in, they eat the Big Mac and go, damn, that's a good Big Mac. Something's a little different, but I'm getting my burger. What's going on here? It's like, this Big Mac is good for you. And you can eat 3 of them and not get coronary heart disease. And that's the trick. You want to get people to come, and you want to satisfy the expectation, and then you want to go beyond the expectation and provide something that is going to stick with them for a while, and preferably the ultimate goal, expose and alter thinking, which again is an arrogant thing to say, because why is it a story I want to share or Star Trek wants to share important? Because we have something to say about interracial relationships. For other people, that's going to be an offense. Well, that's why you do the McDonald's thing, is you get a person who would normally want a Big Mac and not really care about the health ramifications, and they fall in love with it, and then you surprise them with, hey, you know what? This actually is going to be good for you. So when you're telling a story, people come in, they're like, yeah, I got the Big Mac, I got my burger on, but I came out thinking, you know what? I don't have trouble with gay people because I saw something today and it opened my eyes. I have less of an issue with race. I have less of an issue with religion. I have less of an issue with women being in power. Whatever it is you're trying to share in your opinion of what is important for human growth, you got to do it in such a way. I could wear a banner, stand on a corner, and scream at you, women need to be equals. I can scream at you that, all religions matter, all religions don't matter. But you're shoving it down people's throats. There's a more elegant way of persuasion, and trying to convince people that your opinion may be of value to them. Never to say that your opinion is above somebody else's or more right, but clearly when you're sharing your opinion, it is because you have a belief in it. But I think that entertainment is one of the greatest privileged, responsible sources of product that can, if handled well, make a difference. You just have to do it so that it isn't preachy and it is respectful of everyone. As a long answer.
That's awesome. Yeah, I don't know really what else to say to that, really. For everyone watching and listening at home, thank you so much for joining us on this week's episode. Thank you, Neville, for being here. This has been an incredible episode. It really has.
Well, thank you.
Remember, you can catch up with more CloneStarPod at our website, clonestarpod.com. There is some incredible new merch now available at a more affordable price, so make sure you check that one out. Until next time, live long and prosper.
Did it.